Hey YouTube, Kira Qualia here, bringing you all my Cardfight Vanguard Dragonic Overlord The Rebirth deck profile for Post-Clan Selection Volume 5. This was the release of the latest support for V Standard format. I don't really do too many of the V Standard deck profiles on the channel, but Dragonic Overlord is one of my favorites, so I figured I'd do a deck on it focusing on the reverse unit for Dragonic Overlord The Rebirth, having a very similar lock playstyle to its original series counterpart. Definitely happy with the results of the deck. It focuses on some of the backup you can use with Dragonic Overlord and then Dragonic Overlord the Cross and the End as well. For this unit, just being able to copy the abilities of this unit altogether, and with some of the added retire support that you have with this deck. So let's go ahead and get started with the deck profile. Now, for the grade 3s, sadly, I don't have 4 copies of Dragonic Overlord The Rebirth, but you do want to run 4 copies of this card at the beginning of your battle phase. If you have 1 or more rear guards, lock all of your rear guards, and until end of turn, at the end of the next battle this unit attacked, you can counter +1, discard a card from your hand, and stand this unit. So, keeping that original play of locking all your rear guards to give this card an attack, and when this unit attacks a Vanguard, you can Soul Blast 1, and for every 2 of your locked rear guards, choose one of your opponent's rear guards and retire them. So you can potentially also just retire a bunch of rear guards with this card when it attacks, making it very powerful just to wipe out your opponent's field. And also, once per turn, at the end of the battle of this unit attack, if you have 5 or more locked cards and you have 4 or more cards in your damage zone, discard 2 cards from your hand, stand this unit, and you get Imaginary Gift Force. So this is kind of like the original playstyle where you would have broke road over the Dragonic Overlord Break Ride, and then you get the additional restand for your Dragonic Overlord The Rebirth, having 3 attacks in total to make up for the fact that you would want to lock all of your rear guards with this card. So with it, you have a retire skill, and then also just the ability to attack multiple times, making for a very scary twin drive altogether for this card. And I also run 4 copies of Dragonic Overlord the Cross for Vanguard once per turn. Soul Blast 1, search your deck for up to 1 card with Overlord and its card name that's different from this unit and put into your soul. Shuffle your deck, and this unit gets all the abilities of that card's name and abilities until end of turn. And when your card effect would count the number of cards in your hand, it's regarded as 0. And if your opponent's Vanguard is grade 3 or greater, this unit cannot be chosen by grade 1 or basically it can't become 0 or less for the drive. So what you can do with this card is just have an easier search for your Dragonic Overlord The Rebirth, being able to set it up in the soul and then gain all the abilities of this card, which really doesn't play much for the drive minus or anything like that. It plays more for the lock rearguard style, which you just have to set up those rearguards to lock. This is just, like I said, more for the fact that you can easily search this card out as another ride target for it. If you want to go for another playstyle having like less rearguards, you can also just rely on 2 Dragonic Overlord The End for the last of the great thieves that I run in the deck. Just having the restand power and discard cost that works well with the cross playstyle, but just an added backup option to utilize in this deck altogether. And that is it for the grade 3s. Moving on now to the grade 2s. I run 4 Ignorode Dragon. On Vanguard or Rearguard, when placed, you'll get the top 7 cards of your deck and reveal up to 1 Dragonic Overlord the Cross from among them. Put into your hand and shuffle your deck, and when your Vanguard attacks, if your hand has 4 or less cards, it gets plus 5,000 to end of turn. So with the investment you can use with Dragonic Overlord The Rebirth, you can get some pretty good power off of this unit, but it's another search. And once again, like I said, with a once per turn search your deck for an Overlord with the Cross, it's just another easy way to search out a viable grade 3 to make use of on your Vanguard circle. And I also run 4 copies of Torrid Cannon Dragon with this card. On Vanguard or Rearguard, counter blast 1, put a normal unit from your drop on the bottom of your deck. Choose one of your opponent's grade 2 or less rearguards, retire it. If your hand has 4 or less cards, you draw a card. So this can just help to set up your field, giving you a retire against your opponent, but still being able to give you draw power to then potentially call that one last rearguard you need to have 5 lock rearguards to fully utilize the restand power of Dragonic Overlord The Rebirth. Remember, you have to be at 4 damage, which is playing into the limit break playstyle it is meant to have, but you can just use Torrid Cannon for that easy setup since your Dragonic Overlord The Rebirth also only needs 1 counterblast to use its first skill. And for more rearguard pressure, when you're not going for the lock setup, I also run 3 Burn Rise Dragon on rearguard. When your Vanguard stands by a card ability, counter +1, discard a card from your hand, it gets plus 15,000 and critical +1. So if you don't go for the full lock play, you at least have a rearguard when your Vanguard stands to have an additional plus 15,000 and critical +1. And depending on what imaginary gift you're using against your opponent, can just add to that pressure altogether if you put that imaginary gift force circle on your rearguard. And lastly, for the grade 2s, I just run 1 copy of Burning Horn Dragon. From the hand, when it will be discarded, it may be discarded as a grade 3. And when this card is discarded from hand during your turn, if your Vanguard is grade 3 or greater, you can Soul Blast 1, choose one of your opponent's rearguards, and retire it. So it could be for the discard cost for any of the Dragonic Overlord skills we may try to use. Even with the discard, just to have an additional retire on top of the Rebirth could be the final thing needed if you only have 2 attacks against your opponent to retire that last rearguard they may have thanks to this card. If you want to increase any of the numbers of this card, you can always drop some of the numbers of Burn Rise Dragon if you don't want to go for a rearguard attack in this deck. This can just be used as a hand cost card to discard for the Rebirth, and then just fully focus on your Vanguard as it as it locks all of your rearguards. And now moving on to the grade 1s, I run 4 copies of Heatshot Dragon. When placed on Vanguard, discard a card from your hand and draw a card. So just easy consistency for getting into the draw you may need. And on rearguard, at the end of the battle, this unit boosted to grade 3. If it is boosted, stood, you stand this unit. Just reboosting your standard unit can just give you additional power to use, so you don't have to really worry about when you want to, invest in the boost for your Vanguard. Having this one readily available for you to use whenever you want. As for other grade 1s, since you're locking a lot of your rearguards, I just ran ones that can either be searchers, so 4 Lava Flow Dragon. During your turn, if you have more rearguards than your opponent, plus 5,000, and on Vanguard or rearguard, when placed, you search at the top 5 cards of your deck and search up to 1 grade 3. So just like I said, another way to search out either the Rebirth or any of the Dragonic Overlord units that we have. And then lastly, for the grade 1s, just 3 copies of Sable Dragonute as another retire on rearguard, or when its attack hits on Vanguard, you draw a card. So a good ride target if you don't go for the Lava Flow ride, and then the additional setup by being able to retire from the rearguard and drawing a card. So you don't really have too many grade 1s that focus on additional boosts, since most of the time they will be locked, but still we have ones that either give you draw power or ones that can be focused on for the use of boosting later on afterwards. Now moving on to the grade 0s for our starter, I am running Lizard Soldier Conroe. I would just say the most fitting for the Dragonic Overlord deck. And when rode upon, you draw a card, and if your opponent's Vanguard is grade 1 or greater, you put a Quick Shield ticket into your hand. So you have the Quick Shield order to then use for this, just giving you the additional +5 shield, or even just to be discarded as an additional card in your hand. And for the trigger lineup, going with the 8 criticals, so 4 of the Rakshasa critical and 4 of the embodiment of Spear Tar. I would just say the most fitting for the Dragonic Overlord deck. And for the draw triggers, I'm running 4 for the Sentinel as well, which is Wyvern Guard Bari, just the discard cost, and additional draw just to have hand consistency, so you always have the 5 rear guards to lock. And for the heal, ideally I do want to run the Dragon Dancer Nastasha, since it is the one with the additional power and critical minus when going up against your opponent if you did not ride a grade 3 or greater. So if you are with the grade stuck option, sadly you have this to rely on, and additional shield power. So I would run 4 copies of this card. I just have the Dragon Monk Genjo, which you can run if you don't have this heal in the deck. But that is it for the deck profile. I hope you all enjoyed the video. Like I said, I don't update too many of the V standard decks often, but when it's a deck I really do care about, like Dragonic Overlord, I never want to overlook that deck profile, and I hope you all enjoy. And as always, until next time, please don't forget to leave a like and subscribe, and Kira Qualia out.